There you go. John Luke is coming. Okay, perfect. Great. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate everybody taking the time this morning to get together and meet. I know we're all virtual. Don't know about everybody else, but I've had enough snow for the year. So I'm ready for golf season. So I'm ready for this to melt and to kind of get some warm temperatures and let's get going with golf season. Um, but I just before we get started, I wanted to take a minute and just kind of go around the room quickly. We have our interns with us today, and yeah, again, I'd like to thank Montgomery College for your support in this and getting us some great interns. So I wanted to just start and kind of maybe go around the room. We'll start with the interns. If you guys can introduce yourselves, and then we'll go around and make sure everybody else has a chance to say hello and introduce.
All right. So, hello, everybody. My name is Marcelo Rodriguez. I'm a second-year business major at Montgomery College and also an Macklin Business Institute student.
Hi, my name is Sainabu. I'm a second-year business and business analytic major. I'm also in the Macklin Business Institute.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm also a student at Montgomery College studying business, and I'm also in the MBI program.
Hello, I'm Matthew. I'm a sophomore, second year business student as well. And I'm also in the MBI program.
Hi, I'm Gianluca Mena. I'm going through my second semester at MC, majoring in business.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate you guys doing that. We've all met before, but I'll just say hello again. Keith Miller, CEO of the Revenue Authority and Chair of the Task Force. I'll go around the room here. Tommy, if you could, I'll just kind of call everybody out as we go around.
Hi, I'm Tommy. I work for Councilmember Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, one of the architects of this task force on the county council.
Great. Kelly?
Morning. Thank you all for helping us with this project. I'm Kelly Groff from Visit Montgomery.
Right. Jeff?
Good morning, Jeff Sullivan, Director of System-Wide Athletics for MCPS.
Great. Stephen?
Hi, Steve Greenfield. I'm the Montgomery College Vice President for Workforce Development and Industry Partnerships. And welcome to our wonderful students. How are you? Thanks for coming.
Susan?
Hey, everybody. Susan Madden, Office of the President, MC. And Steve and I can go now that you have our wonderful students on board. You don't need us anymore.
Great. Darren?
Good morning. Darren Fluche, Deputy Director of Montgomery Parks for Administration.
Tom?
Morning. Great to have the students with us. Tom Cove, I'm the chair of the Montgomery County Sports Advisory Committee and 30-year CEO of the Sports and Fitness Industry Association. Just retired.
Right. Matt?
Good morning, Matt Liber. I'm the executive director of the Mountain Soccerplex. I apologize. I'm in the car. I'm actually going to DC to meet Tom's replacement at SFIA.
There you go. And Jason?
Good morning, everybody. Jason Fasto, Program Manager with Montgomery County Recreation. Just filling in today for our usual representative, Adrian Clutter, who is a Division Chief at Montgomery County Rec.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Really, really appreciate everybody doing that. So before we get started with the presentation today, I just kind of wanted to go through and kind of just review a little bit about where we are. So as everybody's aware, we've been the current task is to really collect data for the task force so we can develop the framework and really identify the best type of facility to build in the county. Again, the goal and the timeline that we're on is really focused around April. And Tommy, if I remember correctly, we've got to kind of meet with the Econ committee by the end of April to kind of make a request potentially for the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We have not set a date on that though, right? As of this time?
Not yet, no.
Okay. So that's really what where we are and what we're kind of doing. Again, I want to thank the interns for their work so far. They've been doing a lot of work in reading and all the information that you guys have sent over. So they've been doing a lot of work in reading and kind of putting some data together. And so as we start, we've kind of broken it down into 4 tasks for them. It's really kind of an inventory of the facilities in the county and the region, participation levels by sport, economic impacts of sports, and then a mapping of the available property in the county, and finally, surveys. So two of the interns are working on surveys. So today, what we're going to do is start. We're going to turn it over to the interns. They're going to walk through a presentation for us today, really where they have done a lot of work in just reading and kind of putting things together. What you're going to see today is kind of a touch on inventory of facilities, participation levels, and then a discussion on the surveys. The goal of today is really get the task force input, feedback, kind of what you think they're missing, what we need as a task force, some really good feedback to the interns so that as we start going into next month, by March, we can get maybe more of a comprehensive look of what we as a task force need to see. So hopefully, has anybody got any questions before that? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to the interns and let them kind of present what we have and kind of start the discussion that way. Sounds good. Guys, I don't know. Matthew, I think you're sharing the screen. Let me know.
Yeah, should I share it now?
Yeah, if you can,
Okay,
if you
sounds
guys
good.
are, turn it over to you guys to walk through what we got.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So this is Marcelo Rodriguez, and the first part will be an overview of Montgomery County Recreational and Regional Park and Field. So as we can see, in Montgomery County, we have 24 rectangular field available in the recreational and regional parks, 40 diamond field, 1 cricket, which totals to 65 total field in Montgomery County. That was from the Montgomery County Athletic Field Recreational Park report. If you can go to the next slide. So this is just an overview of in the report what was available in terms of field in Montgomery County. I want you to be aware that not everything is included in that overview. So the rectangular field, we have, in what I noted, 8 field that has 10, less than 10 rectangular field, 10 facilities that has, I'm sorry, 8 facilities that has less than 10 field in it. And we have 10 facilities that has 10 or more rectangular field. And for the diamond shaped field, we have 3 facilities that has 4 and less, that's less than 4, I'm sorry, and 4 facilities that has 4 and more. That's for all the facilities that was mentioned in the reports.
All right. Darren, did you have a question?
A clarification. So that the visual that you showed and the data that you're describing is for our regional and recreational parks only. We have hundreds of fields in our local parks that are not included in this particular analysis, and just wanted to clarify that if you're doing a game only field analysis, then this is the correct data set. If you're doing an overall inventory, it's excluding hundreds of fields.
So, so if we could just along that line, Darren, and I'm going to throw this out to the group, is to kind of say, and this was kind of really what the point of today was, to kind of take a look at this. What do we want to see? So as we're trying to make our decision as a task force, what is it that we want to see? Like you said, Darren, is it reality to kind of inventory every individual facility? Because what you're saying is kind of the one-off facilities. Maybe explain that a little bit more, Darren, that's not included.
Oh, well, there are hundreds of fields that are not included here, right? But those are local park fields that are used for practices and more casual games. These are game-only fields that we try to, the point of this infographic is that we try to lighten, irrigate, and fence our game-only fields to keep them up to a high quality. We maintain them on a daily maintenance standard. Our local parks we visit once or twice a week, and we do not aspire to maintain them to a game standard, right? So this is a subset of our inventory that is a higher quality and is not inappropriate for a tourism study to focus on these fields. But I just wanted to be clear that we are talking about a very narrow, somewhat narrow subset of our full inventory.
I think you can just footnote that, Keith. I mean,
Well, yeah,
to address it as a footnote on what it does and doesn't include.
agree, but I think what I'm trying to determine more is we as a task force, as we're trying to determine what is available in the region, do we want to look at all of those individual fields that are just kind of recreation, or is this the inventory that we really want to look at for our purposes and our discussion, right? Because that's what I'm kind of trying to determine.
Yeah, my sense is,
Oh, God, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. My sense is that this captures it. We don't, from a tourism point of view, don't really need to focus much, exactly what Darren said, but doesn't I would add in the school fields and anything that would be good enough for someone to come from outside to play on. Isn't that what we're trying to get a benchmark on? So
Yeah.
this is this captures well. I think it's perfect in the sense that it differentiates in terms of county inventory between all the run-of-the-mill fields and the ones that are really game ready and the best quality and the ones that would be attractive from a tourism. But I would think that at least some, probably all, hopefully all of the high school fields and maybe others might be overlaid on this that would then say, here's the inventory of tourism worthy. And Matt might know better off the top of his head, but that's my sense of what we're looking for to answer your question, Keith.
And soccerplex fields are not listed here because they're maintained.
That was going to be I was going to ask that question if soccerplex was included in this. So that needs to be adjusted. Tom, you hit it right on the head as far as what should and shouldn't be included. And then I'm guessing this only is the public maintained field. So like only Boys and Girls Club that have 10 fields is also not included in this.
This is strictly the Parks Department.
Okay.
So it doesn't include anything in Gaithersburg or anything like that.
Okay. Gotcha.
If I could, Susan's had her hand up for a minute here. Let me just, Susan.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what some other folks were saying. I think the inventory needs, without seeing the totality of the slide deck or the work that they were given to review, it would make sense to include soccerplex, boys and girls, and municipal fields as appropriate. But I think the notion of the local parks, there are two things. One, are they game ready, right? But also their location and their accessibility, right? To a certain extent, you could see a tournament come in and want to leverage the most they can out of, say, one or two of these really game-worthy fields. And then you may want them to spread out at some of those local parks. And they accept that the quality is a little bit less, but then can they get into the neighborhood where that park is buried, right? And would the neighbors appreciate lots of guests in their neighborhood that day? So I think you have to keep that in mind, but ditto to what everybody else said.
Yeah. Okay. And clarifying, Steve, I see your hand up. It just for clarifying for the group on the presentation, if you could go to the next slide. So this inventory, was there anything else on the inventory level? Is there another slide here? Because we're kind of jumping around on you. So I just want to make sure that we do. Is there anything else on the inventory side? Okay, so these are more stadiums and stuff. Okay, so on the field side, on this slide here, and I noticed you guys looking at DMV on this one, did you guys include facilities like the soccerplex was raised and only Boys and Girls Club? Is that included in this inventory?
I believe that soccerplex it's included, but according to our resources, not everything was included. We didn't have all the materials to cover the entire inventory in the DMV area.
Great, thank you. And so then, Jeff, well, Steve, I'm sorry, you had your hand up.
Oh, I just had a comment related to parking, some of the local parks, and we probably should be alert to the parking available at some of those spaces if we're bringing in tournaments.
Right. Which leads me to another question. Jeff, I know the school fields are not in here, but what are the regulations there? Are the school fields even available to be used for this type of sport, tourism type?
That's a great question, Keith. I would recommend that we would elevate the artificial turf fields to be included in this. The natural grass fields would not be online. Simply, high schools are using them throughout the fall and the spring. The grass fields, they're covered throughout the winter, and then the spring, in the summertime, we're trying to get all of our Bermuda fields ready for the fall season. So I don't see those as being included. However, the artificial turf fields, I would recommend we include.
Do you have an inventory of that you can share with just the artificial fields?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Then as far as this goes, as far as what we're looking for, again, I'm trying to make sure that we're giving some direction for the interns to kind of put us together a final inventory of fields. Is there a minimum? Like they broke this slide down and it said less than 10. So there's 8 facilities that have less than 10 fields. Is that what we're looking at a minimum, or do we want to include the individual fields that we're kind of determining are at that higher level? Or should it just be only kind of groups, and what number?
I guess I'll take this. We probably need to do both, because there's events that are strictly they need 10 or more fields, but there's also smaller events that need less than 10 fields. I give you we host the National Rugby Championships. They use 6 fields, but it's a large event, but they just don't use a lot of fields. So I think it's a mixed bag. That 10 is a good cutoff point. Above and beyond, that's kind of a middle ground that will kind of define a large event versus a smaller event.
Okay, so the rectangular fields, you like that 10, breaking it down by 10 or less, and then more than 10.
Correct.
Okay. And do we need to denote the ones that are individual fields, Matt, as a separate breakdown on that?
Yeah, I would definitely do anything that's a single or even a double field as a separate item that's less enticing to a tournament operator.
Okay. So we'll break it down by 1 or 2 fields, less than 10, and then more than 10. And that's for the rectangular fields. Okay. Is there anything, we also have diamonds here. Is there anything there that we need? They broke that down by less than 4 or 4 or more. Is that kind of the way we want to approach the diamonds? And is there any other information we want to look at there?
The diamonds is typically in groups of 4s, because that's the cloverleaf design typically. Okay. So that's a pretty standard measure for diamond sports.
Okay, great. Okay, so is there anybody, does anybody have any other information or maybe data that they could share with the interns to help them identify all these fields in the region? Is there a data source that we can point them through to help? Because they're pulling from the data we've already given them, but is there anything else that anybody has? I know Terry wasn't able to make it today, and Terry did share like 3 studies with me this morning, so that might have some information in there. I haven't had a chance to look at them and pass them on. But if anybody has anything else, Jeff, I know you said you'll give us the turf fields that you have, but if anybody has any other information we can share, I think it'd be helpful. Okay. Next point is, so we look at, they've pulled together rectangular diamond fields. we haven't, and they haven't gotten to other fields that we want to look at. So I know that the conversation when we met just the other day, we were talking with the interns, we were talking about, basketball, kind of Matt, like your indoor area there, in multi-purpose fields, indoor. Ice rinks came up as another discussion point. What else does the task force, do we want to take a look at what's available in the region? Do we need to look at ice rinks available in the region? Do we need to look at indoor facilities as well that are in
Would
the
add aquatic facilities
aquatic?
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indoor track space as well.
Indoor track space. Matt, is that going to be
the only
again? I'm sorry.
the only one in the region is the one in Prince County, and they're slammed, so pretty solid. Like I know other areas are looking at adding indoor tracks, so just something to look at.
And that one is in Prince George's County?
Yeah, it's at the Learning Center.
Okay. Is the indoor track space different than like a multi-sport space that can be converted, or is it strictly track space?
You would start with if you're putting a track in, you would start with those dimensions to make sure it fits in your building.
Okay.
Yeah, the track spaces almost always have other things, but you can't
Yes.
add track after the fact. That's kind of central to that.
Gotcha.
I'd also highlight that when you say basketball, it's not just basketball. Volleyball is a huge tourism opportunity, and they use sort of the same things, but not necessarily. And you can put way more courts in the same size sometimes because it's easier to manipulate the dimensions, and you don't need as fancy court structure. Building court nets and things. They're more malleable. So just to remind, and then of course the question of pickleball is in terms of tennis or non-tennis, indoor or outdoor capability. That's kind of an amorphous question because you can choose to create what you want with pickleball. A lot of indoor places make it out of nothing, but a good tournament would probably have to have a good surface.
And that's PG Sports Complex has track plus a host of other spaces.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for us and what we're trying to take a look at, do we use that model just to look at like the PG Sportsplex as to try and determine how many of those types of facilities are around? Or do we have to look at something else? What kind of, I'm trying to get that down to, we're talking about a lot of indoor type use, but I'm trying to get it down to what do we want to see so that as we kind of make a determination what's available regionally.
Yeah, I would say it's any large indoor space that can be easily converted for different events. So like while the Marriott Convention Center in Rockville is a very big space, it is not really usable for sports.
Right.
Where ours is just an open arena, which it can be used for a whole ton of things. Same with the PG Sport Learning Center. It has the track in there, but somebody pointed out like they do basketball, they do volleyball, they do everything under the sun. It's those types of spaces that I think we want to look at.
And the Washington Convention Center, to pick up Matt's point, is a massive facility that does transform, particularly for volleyball. So there's a ready example every year. The volleyball tournament that they have, they make it out of nothing built for sports. They make at least 100 courts in there, volleyball courts for the tournament, for the two-week tournament. So it's sort of, you have to look at this specifically, but we should at least consider that because that is in our DMV kind of context, and it is a very big sports tourism existing transformation from a convention center to its sports complex for a couple of weeks.
Baltimore Convention Center and the Ocean City Convention Center do the same. So I think right now Ocean City Convention Center has basically 2 straight weeks of cheerleading competitions.
Gotcha.
I wanted to echo the indoor track interest and looking and ensuring we had that as part of the conversation, as well as the ability to host graduations in an arena style facility where we could host high school graduations. Currently, we are outsourcing most of those to either Constitution Hall in DC or the University of Maryland College Park or UMBC. So having the ability to host such events in Montgomery County would be an additional interest.
Hey, Jeff, a quick question that's come up in a couple of different groups I'm involved in. Is there a place that lists how much Montgomery County spends on graduations outside of the county, or for that matter, inside? But when you go to Constitutional Hall or Maryland, University of Maryland College Park or UMBC, is there a place that you find out how much it actually costs? Because it does give a good barometer of outlay out of county as a hard number.
I'd have to get that information and confirm, but I can have that as an action item for me as well.
Great, thank you.
Hey, for what it's worth, MC needs such space, and we spend over $500,000 for one commencement ceremony.
Wow.
Wow, that's right.
How many people does that, when you say you spend $500,000, how many people does that serve then in terms of that one-time event?
We put up a tent on one of our fields in Rockville, and it's a very sturdy tent. We need permits to put it up. And the tent is one of the largest expenses, and we usually, Steve, right, it's about 1,000 graduates across the stage that day, or maybe a little more. And so then you put at least 2 family members in the tent. And so usually we're filling that tent with 5,000 or more people. And we have offsite viewing across the Rockville campus where that's held. So there's a lot that goes into it. And we'd love to have an indoor space and have been on hunt for years to sort of bring down that cost. Be able to bring more family members and not be so worried about the weather and have basically a structure, not just your backyard tent over the field.
I'm seeing that MCPS spent $50,000 last year for 17 schools to go to Constitution Hall. Apparently they give them a break. It's $3,000 per graduation. And if schools go to Xfinity Center, University of Maryland, it's $10,000 per.
Did you say, Steve, did you say there was 3,000 per event? Or
yeah, 3,000 per high school graduation at Constitution Hall. This MCPS site says, yeah.
Okay.
Keith, it's Kelly.
Yes.
Maria, who lives in Poolesville, on our staff said that there are some at the western part of the county go to St. Mary's or to Mount St. Mary's for graduations also. Is that true? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Clarksburg did for years. I think they're moving up to UMBC this year.
Okay.
Clarksburg did for years. So okay, let's bring this back a little bit back to the sports side of it. Understand and got the emphasis on the graduation side of it. Going back to the indoor sports facilities, is it going back to looking at, like, I understand the convention centers, but that PG County facility and what size spaces is there a minimum type size square footage wise that we want to take a look at? I'm kind of thinking about, like, like we said, rectangular fields less than 10 or more than 10. Is there kind of like a different size? Matt, I know your facility is, I guess, kind of smaller compared to maybe the PG one. Can you give us a little reference point there and maybe some ideas on square footage that we want to look at?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure of the square footage for PG. It's definitely larger than us. Our arena space is right around 45,000 square feet, and we are on the smaller side of that type of facility.
Okay.
I am aware of one of the better track facilities built in the country in the last 20 years is in Boston. New Balance, when they redeveloped their headquarters, they built 2 major tourism places. One is a world-class track center, and the other one is a hockey rink, which is where the Boston Bruins practice, but then they rent it out to 1 million people too. 2 different facilities right next to each other. I can look into whether there's somebody or some information there. But those are both world-class places that were part of a redevelopment, the whole kind of basic commercial redevelopment with a couple of hotels and retail and all that. But it is one of the newer and more successful and higher quality globally attractive track places built in this country, at least.
I echo that. I've been there. I think Matt Liver's been there too. It's phenomenal.
It's gorgeous.
It's phenomenal.
Okay. All right, so we've got to dig a little bit on that. I know there is the St. James down in Northern Virginia as well. I don't know what size. Does anybody have an idea of what size that facility is? I think
the whole facility is close to 200,000, 250.
Okay. So would it
But
be
it's very segmented what it is, though.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that we're looking kind of at facilities maybe around that 40,000 square foot and larger, Matt, or is it even worth it to look at the 45,000 square foot?
It's Matt, it's 450,000 square feet. You were right.
There you go.
Yep.
And Keith, I would say we wouldn't want to look anything smaller than what our field house is. You're not going to really attract anything new to it. Our operators always look for additional courts, but you're not going to, if you build like a 5-court thing, you're not going to get another tournament to come in to take that 5 courts. Is not attractive to them.
Okay. So basically we're looking at indoor facilities in the region that are 45,000 square feet or greater. We've kind of got a note on the convention centers that are using multi-purpose, but also looking for those sports facilities that way, with an emphasis on track and field. Because you guys said that track and field, you can do other things, but if it's not designed for track and field, you can't add that afterwards. Am I understanding that?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. The other venues that were kind of offered out there is so I threw out there ice, the ice rinks, things of that nature. Is that something as a task force based on need and growth that we want to get an inventory of? Again, just to have as part of our discussion?
I don't think it would hurt to have that. I mean, ice is a very desirable thing. It's one of the most expensive things to build, but there's not enough ice in this region as there is now. I mean, if you ask anybody that is a hockey parent that are getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning so they can get ice time, they will absolutely tell you we need more ice.
Can the ice rinks be used for multi-sport, or at that level it's just strictly ice?
I'm sure you can. I don't know the economics behind that being viable.
Okay.
From Parks' standpoint, we have the 2 ice centers, and we have a third that's in the planning stages, and you can come to your own opinions about whether or not that will ever get built. It is a large investment, but it is something that is on our plans. And I know that Prince George's is looking for state money to renovate a couple of their facilities as well. So while I think arguably there is a need for more ice, and it probably is a good tourism piece. Wouldn't want to necessarily compete with those existing projects. Something to think about.
Darren, do you have any information as far as you guys are looking at that potential of a third complex? Do you guys have any data on what is around regionally as far as ice facilities that could be shared?
We have some internal analysis that boils down to we need more, but I'm not sure how carefully quantified that has been. I could dig around a little bit.
If you could, that'd be great. It'd be helpful just to get that look at it. Gianluca, I know you got your hand up there.
Yeah, I thought I'd bring it up. Jana Anderson had brought up the fact last meeting that Ion was changing their two of their spaces that were rinks into just multi-purpose, which would also mean more of that, like more rinks being needed in the area.
Yeah, and also we need to include their revision into multi-sport complexes in the inventory going forward, right? On that complex. So, okay. Tom?
Just a question of how we're accessing information about private facilities. I think the Rockville Ice thing is private, right? And
Yes.
right next to it is a indoor facility that does a lot of training in games, but in sort of one-off games like flag football and futsal and lacrosse practice and 3-on-3 lacrosse. So my question is twofold. One is to make sure that we do include the private ones in this inventory, and two, to acknowledge if you go inside, there's a lot of money to be made apparently by practice and different one-off sports. Futsal being the most obvious. I don't know anything about it. All I know is I've been there a lot of times, and they seem to have 1 million people there.
Yeah, that's been and I don't know if they still have, when you used to pull up to the arena, there was a training facility on the right and then the training facility to the left of the ice arena. I don't know if the one on the right is still there or not. But I know that one on the left, I believe to the left of the arena is still there. But I think your question is perfect. And this is kind of where we're reaching out to try and say is, can anybody help us or point us in the right direction on how do we get that private information? Because that's kind of what the interns were looking at too, is trying to do, searches and trying to figure it out that way. But does anybody have any data out there that includes some of that private space, whether it be the arenas, the training centers? Does anybody have a kind of database of that can be shared? Okay, I think that is a no.
I know when I talked to some of the consultants that we were originally considering, they sensitive subject. They did say, and I was talking about them for a variety of reasons, not just this committee, that they have access to all that stuff. Because I had this conversation: when you walk in, do you already know the inventory? And they go, well, that's one of the first things we do. And they seem to imply that there is some sort of database out there. I have no idea where and how much it costs and all that.
So maybe I'll reach out to Terry on that a little bit. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they're building that database themselves because they're doing these studies, one after another. So every time they look at a new area, they're adding that to their own database. I don't know of a single source of a database that inventories all facilities.
Okay.
I think a basic question Matt would know better than any of us, I bet, is what are the big private facilities? Anywhere that's a real big private, that's hosting tournaments already. I'm pretty sure Matt would know if it were in Montgomery County, and maybe beyond, because they're big and they're competitive and they're out there. I'm not familiar with any space in the county that's it's legitimately except for Soccerplex, it's legitimately a national venue or even a regional venue for big tournaments.
Yeah, in county on the rectangular side, it's us and marginally only Boys and Girls Club, just because they get used more than just their programs. Regionally, you got the interns go look at Coppermine. Just go to their website. They have like 30 facilities in Maryland, both indoor and outdoor, and they're continuing to grow. So that's definitely a source. And then you have Covenant Park up in Howard County, which is private. Other than that, there's not a lot of private outdoor facilities in Maryland.
Gotcha. The last piece on the facility side of things was, kind of had this, Tom, you raised the question about tennis indoor versus outdoor. Is that something else that, we as a task force and trying to make this decision of what to build, do we want to look at tennis facilities regionally and get an inventory of that? Or do we not see it going that way?
I mean, I'm always the proponent of the more data you have, the better. And I think pickleball has changed the trajectory of racket sports in general. So I don't think it would hurt to have that information.
Indoor and outdoor, or strictly indoor?
I don't have an opinion on that either way. I mean, other than I think the more data we have, the better decisions we can make.
Okay.
So I would say, yeah, get the outdoor as much as you can.
It's dated now, but the U.S. Open, which is not the official governing body like USA Pickleball's national championship, but it's the U.S. Open for years, the single largest pickleball tournament in the world, started on public courts in Naples, still is foundationally on public courts in Naples, Florida, and they just built it. And I think it's the largest tourism thing in Naples. It's a 2-week deal that just blows out, and people come from all over. But it is fascinating that they started and continue to be based on public courts in Naples, Florida. It's dated now because they were on the front end of the explosion.
So in looking at this and kind of continuing with the discussion we were just having in the other sports, I mean, there's one thing that's try and pick up every single, what I'll just refer to as tennis court in the county, versus are we looking for something that is more of a complex with multiple courts at one location?
Yeah, I got to say the second. There's no reason to get into every single tennis court.
Right. Yeah. I think that we'd be looking forever. What about the and then based on that, is there kind of like we've talked about the minimum sizes on the other ones? Is there a there's a requirement, and does anybody know, as far as like in order to run something successful, we need 6 courts? Does anybody know that data at all?
I'm not as familiar as that on the racket sports side.
Yeah.
But again, to raise the question, Aspen Hill Racket Club is a private facility that has a bunch of courts. I would assume one of the biggest inventory consolidation of racket sport capability in the county. I don't know that much of all the details of the county, but I do know that place is different than most in the sense that it has more courts, quality courts. It could if the deal were to be made, it could host someplace that could be a host, at least in part. And that's what I point out, is a private facility. I don't know where there's any place that's a public facility that would have enough courts in and of itself to host a significant event.
What was the name of that?
Aspen Hill Racket Club, I think it's called.
Okay.
Well, we also have the Montgomery Tennisplex out on the South Germantown with us at the Soccerplex. So they have 3 bubbles and 4 outdoor courts. I think it's 4 courts per bubble, which they do break down into pickleball courts as well.
Great. Darren, do you have any other facilities by that? And do you have an inventory of racket courts in the system in the county?
Well, in the park system, so we have the Wheaton tennis bubble, and then there's the one that's private that Matt just referenced, South Germantown, and then we have some outdoor courts like Olney Mill has a larger number of courts consolidated. So yeah, we have that data.
If that's
I personally don't see tennis as the future of racket sports and sports tourism. I would lean pickleball, purpose built, but we can provide the tennis data if you'd like it. It's easy enough to do.
I think it'd be great, just to, again, as Matt is saying, as long as we have the data and we can take a look at it. Is there any like correlation there that a tennis court equals 2 pickleball courts, or is it like something that we can do a little math and kind of maybe put that together from a size wise?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Matt. I'm trying to remember.
I'd say
what math is.
It's a minimum of 2 or 4, depending on the space you have to the edges of the courts. Like if the courts are right on top of each other, it's usually 2. If you got some space, I think you can put 4 per tennis court.
We at East Norbeck, we just replaced 2 tennis courts with, and I'm going to tell you how many pickleball. but it was a significant 6 pickleball lighted. So they were lighted. There were 2 lighted tennis courts. We replaced them with 6 pickleball courts. So the math, and then you think about the play, just like the person hours of play, and you often have tennis is, you know, one-on-one, even though it can be doubles. If it's singles, that's 2 people, and if both courts are used, that's 4 people. And then you talk about 6 pickleball courts where it's 4 people per court. Then the actual use, pickleball really dominates that.
Great. All right, and thank you everybody for that, because I think we've got a lot better understanding of what we need to create and gather data wise, and appreciate anybody that's committed to providing that data. If you can send it over, it'd be great. And then we can try and get this information put together and have more of a look at it for next month. Is there anything else before we move on there? Anything else? Okay. Guys, if you can go to the next slide, let's just kind of talk about this, because you pulled this data. And this was kind of the larger arena data and looking at things. I know we talked about a couple of things as far as indoor and stuff. Is this information, should we keep it in there? Is there something that we're looking at? Again, when we start thinking about trying to do an indoor facility that can host graduations as well as multiple sports and things of that nature, is there a magic size? Is it 9,000? Is it less than 9,000? Susan, I think you said your graduation is 5,000 people there at Montgomery College. Jeff, I don't know what the average size of a high school graduation would be.
We can get that information for you and provide it.
Okay. Should we leave this data in the report for everybody since it's pulled? Is there any use for this data here and looking at it? I mean, we can leave it, it's pulled, but is there anything else that you guys see that's missing off of this? I guess maybe just based on our conversation, I would say the convention centers probably be the only other thing I would add to this. Just so we have that. Okay.
I would add the Wizards, Mystics, their training center that's in Anacostia.
Okay, thank you.
And then some of the other college, Xfinity Center at Maryland's, UMBC's, whatever they call it these days, and Towson. And because I think these are important for like college events.
Agree.
If we're looking at conference championships and things like that.
Matt, would you put the St. James in this here too?
They're similar to us. They don't really have a arena type, like stadium feel to it. It's more court space and field space.
And Matt, while you were just talking there, that you said the Wizards and Mystics training. You said University of Maryland. What other did you throw out?
UMBC, Towson, Mount St. Mary's, maybe, because their basketball arena is pretty big.
Okay. All right, so we'll do a little bit more digging around, looking at facilities of that size on it. Perfect. Okay, thanks everybody. Really appreciate all that feedback. Guys, who's controlling the slideshow here? I think the next one, do we start transitioning now into, these are the participation rates. Okay, perfect. I'll turn it back to you guys to maybe just walk us through. I think there's a couple slides on this. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Hello again, this is Sainabu, and we're going to start with the national sport participation trends. So at the federal level, we see a strong interest in fitness and individual sport like walking and hiking. And these activities are widely practiced mostly due to their accessibility and convenience. However, despite their popularity, participation in these activities is either stabilizing or showing only slight growth. It suggests that while they remain common, their expansion might be slowing. Interestingly, some sports with fewer overall participants are experiencing notable growth. For example, golf, which is more recreational and social sport, saw a 9.6% increase in participation. That shift might indicate a growing interest in activities that combine fitness with a more social aspect. Next slide, please. So in Maryland high schools, the most popular sports differ between boys and girls. For boys, the top 5 sports include basketball, football, soccer, track and field, and wrestling. And for girls, the most popular sport are field hockey, lacrosse, soccer, softball, track and field, and volleyball. One key factor influencing these trends is team size. Sport like football and soccer require larger teams, allowing more students to participate, as well as the already established school programs that also contribute to their popularity. So when we're comparing Maryland high school sport with national trends, a few patterns emerge. First, we have team versus individual sport. In high school, team sport like basketball, soccer, and football dominate. Meanwhile, at the national level, individual and fitness-based activity are more common. It suggests that young athletes prefer organized team sport while adults opt for individual fitness for convenience. We notice growth in softball and basketball. Both sports are popular in Maryland high school and are also seeing national growth. For example, basketball participation has increased by 8.9%, and softball has grown by 15.3% in year 1 and 31.8% in year 2. Strong professional league and cultural influence likely maintain this interest across all age groups. And lastly, we see a decline in baseball and football. So participation in this sport is decreasing nationally and in some schools. Safety concern, particularly in football, and a shift toward faster paced, less equipment heavy sport might be contributing to this decline.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So, this is there's a lot of really great data out there, and I guess I'm going to try and frame this back into to us and what we're trying to look at regionally as we're trying to make our decision as far as where to go with the sports complex and sports tourism. Anybody have any thoughts or suggestions as far as what we want to look at?
I have a clarifying question. The participation rates, is that strictly looking at high school sports?
Yes, it's strictly Maryland high school sports for boys and girls, and then just some other data pulled from the top 25 activities in the United States.
I mean, Tom, you could probably answer this better than I can, but I would say high school sports don't necessarily correlate to club and recreational sports participation rates.
Yeah, that national data, that's our data. And that's all sport participation, and then the Maryland state that is related to high school. But your point, Matt, is pretty. Basketball is the highest participated sport in America, team sport by far. But the reason it is because it's the only sport in America that's regularly played informally, not on a formal team. So meaning 1-on-1, 2-on-2, no referee, girls and boys in the backyard playing horse. All those issues are good for the growth of a sport. They're not very relevant to a tourism-based decision-making process. So we could help. That's my thing. This is my anything to do with participation rates. I can give you deep detail on, but the bottom line is it's probably when you look at team sport trends, it's really what's growing and why. And in some cases, it's like flag football is going to grow dramatically for two reasons. One, it's brand new, and even in boys, it's new at a competitive level. And two, and most obviously, it's because of girls. So you're going to see massive growth there in ways that would be attractive from a tourism point of view. Whereas in other things, pickleball, massive growth, but we're behind the curve so much that I would be hesitant to invest too much, because we could give you chapter and verse about the amount of money that's poured into pickleball in the last 5 or 6 years, based on the very numbers we're talking about. I can tell you, my phone rang off the hook, but it's almost like there's so much money now. It's bad money chasing good money. So it's kind of contextual.
Right. So Tom, on this data, do you have this data broken down, and how do we want to look at it? Do we want to just take a look at this data at a regional level, and is that available?
So the regional level it drops it's significantly in its value because you have to have a large enough base to make really good trending and year-to-year analysis. Meaning, when a girls' field hockey change, being a small sport, changes a little bit, the percentage change is pretty dramatic if you break it down to a regional level, like Montgomery County, for example. So you're going to see really better to look at sort of high school. But fundamentally, the question that we have in this committee, I'd say, is when you talk about tourism, to understand more the nature of participation as it relates to tourism versus generically participation. For example, pickleball people have a higher income because of originally their age group thing. It was a new thing for them. They had more time because they were older, so they would be more willing to travel to places. They would travel as a group. So the nuances and the specifics versus, say, other things. For example, in volleyball, it'd be hard for us to do a big volleyball thing because there already is a big volleyball thing in Washington that's national. Whereas there might be, we always talk about cricket. We don't really know that much yet about the cricket numbers, but the lack of competition would suggest that some growth in cricket, based in especially where we are physically, culturally, geographically, might be something to pursue, even though the numbers wouldn't suggest there's, upside momentum as there would be in other things. So that's the part of contextually. But yeah, they help. They just don't go too far until you really understand what they are. And to answer your question, there aren't nearly as many data around particularly state or below state regional in terms of the kind of depth of the data that we provided to you here.
So if and one of the things, one of the bullet points, which they haven't gotten to yet, but you're kind of combining them, is the economic impact of the sports and the participation. Are you suggesting we kind of take a look at that combined? And is there a source of data on that we could get that does help us combine that?
There's some. We have, for example, family income against participation. So what's the average family income of a lacrosse player versus a football player, et cetera, things like that. So there is some of that. The tourism part is Matt would know better, and Matt and Terry in Sports ETA about the nature of the actual traveler. As I said, there are certain understandings those of us in the business would know. 12-year-old girl sports are great for tourism because they bring their family and everybody gets a different hotel room versus, I said this before, 16-year-old boy baseball team. They get 2 rooms and pile everybody into the room and eat everything at McDonald's and, whatever. So there are factual, and then there's sort of understanding, and then there's kind of anecdote, and then there's sort of, what you think off the top of your head. But it all fits, but it's just a little bit more complicated. You got to just wade through it. Is the answer. It's not an easy, clear. The national level, the sports-related trend data that we gave you that's here is really good. It's fundamentally founded. It's years in the making. At the regional and level, it's a little bit more complicated, and it's hard to tell. One thing I would say, though, is in terms of sports participation, always is birth rate, and we looked at that a lot. So I would just ask the interns, which I highlight to you, Sonia. I'm not sure I say your name right, but terrific presentation by you. Thank you very much. The idea of birth rate does affect the number of children who are coming in, and there are different bumps that really move things over time.
So, and I appreciate all that, Tom. And I guess what I'm where we need to get to is, what do we want to look at as we get into the next, the next version of this and into the next month or two? What do we need to see? I think we did a real deep dive into the facilities and got a good idea there, but I'm kind of opening it up to everybody to kind of some feedback on, what data do we want to look at in this realm?
This is Matt. I think this goes back to the conversation you and I had last week I think we need to get input from the people that are actually running these events. They're going to have a much better idea of their capacity for new events and things like that, because they're not going to go somewhere to run an event that they know is not going to work. So they're going to be brutally honest with you and say, yeah, I have no intention of coming to the Maryland area because I can't make an event viable there. So the overall participation can help fuel that decision, but we can say all we want, like, no, cricket's the next best thing. But if we can't find an operator that wants to bring an event here, it's not really helpful.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. So I guess I go back to this as far as this data right now and the participation, is it, and maybe Matt, I kind of go back to our conversation, and we're the last part of the discussion today is kind of like the surveys. And we were talking about two different surveys, which we'll get to here in a minute, but we were talking about participants versus organizers. And I'm kind of going back to this is, do we need to get get the inventory of the facilities, kind of get have this data that they've already pulled together, and then kind of correlate that into what we're looking at. And then maybe when we start identifying a couple of options of facilities, do a deeper dive into trying understand some of this. The deeper dive in national trends and, kind of what you just said there, Tom, as far, the family income, the tourism, and that part as kind of to validate the facilities rather than trying to pull all that data right now. Do we just kind of get a little further along?
So one thing I'd suggest is I'm willing to set up a meeting with the interns, and I'll go sit with them and walk through the last 30 years of sports trends in America in detail. And we have so much detail that we could pick out certain things, and I can have a pretty good sense of what people know and care about and the shortcomings of it. So I think that's probably one way to fast forward. And then secondly, if we could figure out, I don't know, Jeff, if you have any knowledge of anything to do with specific to the county, there is the question that we always run into with regard to data around participation trends and tourism, which is, if you get it too local, then those are people that are already playing local. Is that the folks? So what Matt said is really is the answer. You got to get folks who do for a living the money side of sports tourism, because they're the ones who've invested in that. Most of the data that we have here is related to overall participation in the country or in its state or whatever. But I'm happy to go sit down with you guys if you want to, and then we can tease out a bunch of stuff that would be what we have that's good and relevant and valuable. But there's going to be some other stuff that we need more that we don't have, that I wouldn't be able to provide.
Yeah,
okay.
And Keith, I'm trying to get that list of event operators from Sports ETA, so we can start with that. But to answer your question, I think they go hand in hand. I think we go to those operators and say, this is what we have now. Can you make this work? And if not, what do you need to make an event work here?
Right. All right. So as far as the participation rates and stuff,
Also, I'm going to lose you guys. I'm about to go in the tunnel.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. And we'll follow up on the survey. We're going to just wrap up with that a little bit, and then we'll follow up with you on that. Tom, I appreciate your offer there, and we'll definitely take you up on that. I think that's probably the best way to try and sort something out that we can get and discuss as a group. So I appreciate you willing to take that time and do that. And we'll do that. Okay, back to the presentation. I think the last piece was about the surveys, and I'm not sure who's taking that.
Yes, I'll take that. Do you see this next one?
Yes.
So this is just an example of the application we're using called Typeform to make these surveys. We have two different surveys. We have the participant surveys for people maybe coming in from out of town, or local people who would want to participate in a new facility. And then we have a survey for event organizers or operators of other facilities as well. So this is just kind of some snips of the participant survey, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. they're pretty simple. Some of them are multiple choice, some of them are free response to get some input from people who would be interested in sports for a new facility. And this is an example of what the event organizer's view looks like. So this is what we would send to some, I guess, local event organizers, maybe even people of schools that are interested in hosting graduations at a new event. I heard a lot about that earlier. So yeah, I can go between these slides to show you guys.
Great. So as far as this discussion, and I know the group met with Kelly and Matt earlier, I think, a couple weeks ago, and kind of talked about the surveys a little bit. And then there was a little further conversation. I kind of want to throw it out to the group. Matt kind of already mentioned it, was maybe the most critical piece right now on the survey side is to develop a survey around the event organizers and kind of put it out to them first as a first step and a first part of the survey, and then do the participation survey as a second piece based on the type of facility we're recommending building, kind of putting that data into two different buckets and grabbing it at two different times. So I wanted to just stop right there because that's kind of the discussion going on and just get some feedback from the task force here. Do you guys like that concept of let's do the organizers first, kind of get that data first, so that as we start determining what type of facility to build, that'll be valuable input, which I know Matt left with. Any thoughts on that and that plan?
I agree. I think it's a great idea. I think it's smarter to get input from organizers that we know personally now before we even start reaching out to other participants. We have both of the surveys, but we could go to the event organizers first.
Yeah, and we want to get you guys to meet with maybe with Kelly and Matt again, just to make sure we've got all the the right questions and relevant questions that we want to ask those organizers. Kelly, did you have?
I volunteer to help with that with Matt because I think it's really important to hear their feedback about how they feel about facilities in the county and what they could bring to the table also that we can't bring to the community right now because of space.
Yeah. Gianluca?
So for when we're done with the survey, is there a list of organizers that you guys have that we could either call and see if we can send them an email with the link to our surveys? I was just wondering if you have like a list of those people.
Matt should have that.
Yeah. Matt was, as he was dropping off there, he was saying that, he's working on pulling that together for you guys. So I think the next step on the survey side is you guys getting back together with Matt and Kelly. And I know Matt said he was pulling together that and I think, so we want to validate the questions, make sure we've got everything relevant that we want to ask. And then Matt should be able to provide that data. Kelly, I think you were working a little bit on a platform that might be able to host this to kind of gather the data.
It sounds like, Matthew, did you find a platform? It sounds like at the beginning of this conversation, they mentioned what they were using.
Yes, it's called Typeform. We went through a couple of applications, but this one's very simple and easy to use. So we went with this one, but we're open to use different ones as well.
Is this a charge for this?
It didn't charge us to make the survey, but Gianluca, you might know. To send the survey, I'm not sure if it'll cost anything.
So we chose it mainly because it's really easy to organize the surveys themselves and then also to create them. The only catch was that after 10 responses, we'd need to pay a monthly fee. But I mean, if we're getting, we can switch to whatever. It's not too big of a deal just to transfer it. But we were just using this because it's easier to organize everything and see what we have.
This application was easy on our end, so we made it on this, but we can also transfer everything to a different free application that will allow us to send surveys for free without charging us the monthly fee that Typeform charges us.
Keith, I can run this by our marketing team, this Typeform, and see what their thoughts are.
Okay.
And if it's not too big of a fee, I'm happy to pay for the fee.
Okay.
I believe it's like, so I want to say it's sub $30 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not an issue.
Perfect. Any other thoughts on the survey? and what we're doing there in the game plan. Does anybody have any other feedback in regards to that? Or does anybody have any other surveys that you may have done? I don't know if Parks or Recreation has done anything in the past as far as surveys like this.
We haven't necessarily done surveys per se like this, but just to go back to kind of the points about the organizers, we do a number of different sports in the county, particularly at our rec centers, and we are, very reliant oftentimes on who our partner organizations are that we work with, and sometimes we can't provide a particular program or sport just because we can't find contractors to be able to do that, and oftentimes that does adjust based on trends that take place. So for example, we have more pickleball instructors. We have a sizable volleyball contractor that provides it for us. So it's great to see that kind of looking at who the organizers are or could be, but it definitely has an ebb and flow to it, at least from what we have seen. We also do, I work on the countywide programs team that oversees the sports through that the rec department provides. We do actually just recently did some data analysis of our participation rates and particularly geographically as well, if that is of any interest. I know we're really focusing on trying to bring in people from outside the county, but if that could be of help, we can certainly look into providing that also.
I appreciate that, Jason. I think that would be helpful just to kind of understand a little bit about what is happening. And that would be good. And the last piece, I don't know, maybe as a cross reference to what Matt is pulling. I don't know if you have a list, of maybe some additional organizers that could be, sent to survey. That might be helpful too.
Yeah, we're happy to send that over. Most of ours are small businesses
Okay.
that are providing. So I can't say for certain how much bandwidth they would have to do something necessarily, but certainly happy to look into it a little bit more.
At least maybe get them involved in the surveys, because they might be doing some stuff for you, and they might be organizing some
Yeah.
bigger events maybe that they're doing somewhere else. You know
I
what
mean,
I mean?
exactly. Candidly, I mean, I think if we have people that are in the county that would
Yeah.
be willing to provide the support for something like this in the county and keep the organizing in the county, that's a benefit too in a lot of ways.
Great. Okay. Well, Matthew, you can stop sharing, I think, at this point, and appreciate it. As we wrap up here, I just want to thank you guys for a great presentation today and just digging into a lot of information. Hopefully, you found this conversation. I kind of gave you a little heads up on Monday. This thing was going to go in a lot of different directions, as you saw it today, and I think that's good. It was a lot of great feedback, a lot of great input here, and we'll kind of pull this all together and reconvene. I think next Monday is our standing call, and so we'll kind of talk about the next phase of this. In the meantime, you got a number of people who stepped up to kind of help, and some of the upcoming meetings that you'll have over the next month, I think will be very beneficial as well. But I can't, again, I got to just stop and say thank you for what you presented today, because I thought you guys did a great job and pulled together a lot of really good information right off the bat, and it was a good starting point. So kudos to you guys, and look forward to as we continue here and you guys pulling more data together. To everybody else, thanks for all the input, and I think we've really got a good framework of what we need to pull and put together here in the next month or two. Is there any other open business that we need to throw out there? Okay.
I have one more thing, actually.
Sure.
Keith, you wanted me to mention about the information we need on economic impact. Because what I found on the 2023 ETA report was only economic impact for the whole industry, not for each sport individually.
Yeah, and thank you, Samantha, for bringing that up again. And that is, that's where Tom is going to meet with you guys, and that part of that discussion of pulling that economic input, the participation rates versus the income per sport, and different kind of pulling it. It's kind of a little, as he was describing, it's a little mix and a little bit of a feel that you got to pull together, and that's going to be a really good discussion with Tom and his data. So I think that'd be very helpful. Kelly?
Keith, how can I get emails to Matthew so I can connect the marketing team with the students to talk about type form and if that's going to work well for them.
They are included in today's invite.
Email. Okay.
Yeah, the emails, they're in, I put all the interns in as optional. So that's
Okay.
all the interns there, and I'm happy to share them as well. And we can do that.
Would you like me to send you an email with the type form application? And then you can also and I'll CC Matthew as well.
Perfect.
We can all
Yep.
be in.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Steve?
And finally, Montgomery College has a labor analytics tool called Lightcast, and we can run reports on sports tourism related occupations or the more obvious occupations. We've actually run a report. So whenever you'd like us to share that, we can do that. But looking at hospitality and coaching and sports therapy and facilities, so many occupations are connected to sports tourism. But if there's ever a need for that, we're ready with it.
Yeah, I think we might, if you could share that now, I think it'd be good to start looking at that and just reviewing what you have there. I think that'd be great.
I'll send it out to the group. I'll send it out. Yep.
Perfect. I appreciate that very much. Great. Well, thanks everybody. That was a really good discussion, and we'll see everybody in another month. Thanks.
Thank you.